So in this video, I'm going to try to sort out what's going on in the first sentence of 1 John. I told you in class last week, this is by far the hardest sentence in the entire letter. Most Greek writers would have had some sort of fairly fancy introduction to their letters. You can see prologues in Gospels like the Gospel of John. You can see it especially in Luke and Acts, etc., etc. And so John does a sort of a complex first sentence. In fact, we don't know exactly where the first sentence should end. There's no punctuation in the original Greek manuscripts. So our translations, for example, have a period here. That's the first period you're going to find. You have another period here. That's the second one. I think you could argue that all of that would be one sentence in Greek, because after this one, it just keeps right on going with Kai. So probably all one sentence. The question is, how does this sentence work? Well, the first thing to notice is that we have what we call a digression from here to here. In the first part, John is going to introduce the concept of Zoe, life, and then he's going to digress and say, and this life, and he's going to say a few things about it, and once he's finished, he's going to resume the sentence that he was using before it. So, in order to figure out how this sentence works, let's, for the beginning part, just pretend this doesn't exist, the part that digresses, so that we can read the sentence as sort of a main block and then insert the digression afterwards. Even then, what in the world is going on here? So instead of having you puzzle over it too much, I'm just going to show you where the main verb of the sentence is, what the subject of that verb is, and then what in the world all the rest of the parts are doing to fill it out. So the way I read this sentence, this is the main verb right here. So the word apangelo means to announce or to report. You can tell by the ending. We are reporting. So John, the author, is considering himself part of a larger group of people who are doing this. We'll sort out what that means in a little while. And so the subject of the sentence isn't even present. It's the word we contained within the verb. So the main sentence is, we are announcing, subject, verb, and then the indirect object, also to you, or even to you as well. We are announcing something also to you. Now, everything that precedes it tells us what it is that John and whoever he means by we are actually announcing. What are they announcing? So let's take the very first 4 words, and this is going to be part of the answer. What is it that John is announcing? These 4 words. Ein was, that's imperfect of Amy. Ap arches. Usually after a preposition like this, they delete the definite article. It would be easier to read if it was ap tes arches. So those 2 words mean from the beginning. And what's this? So this looks like it could be an article, but in fact it's a relative pronoun. You can see it by the fact that it's got not only the rough breathing, but also the accent. They're shoved in front of the letter because it's a capital letter and it doesn't fit on top. So this is a relative pronoun, what, or that which. So what is it that John's announcing? John is announcing that which was from the beginning. Remember how the Gospel of John starts? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So Jesus was the one who was at the beginning with God, as God. And so John is now going to announce that which was from the beginning. He's going to talk about that which was before he introduces it as a person, the one who this was. So in fact, it's going to take quite a while before he introduces the fact that this is Jesus, which is kind of the same thing that happens in the Gospel of John. It's the Word, and then we don't actually get the name Jesus until after the Word becomes flesh in verse 14. So we are announcing also to you that which was from the beginning. So this clause, this relative clause introduced by relative pronoun, is the direct object of this verb. We are announcing that which was from the beginning. Inside the clause, you have a verb and you have a subject. So this is actually a nominative, neuter, singular relative pronoun. This thing was, subject of ain. So a nominative relative pronoun, but the whole clause functions as the object of the verb. So you don't make the pronoun agree in its case with its function here, you make it agree with its function in the clause in which it appears. That's how all pronouns work. So now we're going to get multiple ways of referring to that same thing. So Jesus is that which was from the beginning. Jesus is also that which we have heard. This was an imperfect, but this is a perfect. If you check your principal parts, that's the perfect of akuo. So that which we have heard. Inside this clause, we have a subject, we have a verb, to hear, and we have a direct object. We have heard this thing. So that which we have heard. In this clause, that's an accusative, neuter relative pronoun, because it's the object of this verb that has we as its subject. But the whole clause is still the object of this verb. So that which was from the beginning, we are announcing. That which we have heard, we are announcing. That which we have seen, this functions sort of like that. That's the perfect of horao. That which we have seen, tois, ophthalmos, heimon, by our eyes, or by means of our eyes, or with our eyes. These datives have different functions. The different keywords for dative would be in, with, by, etc., etc. So this works best if you translate it as that which we have seen with our eyes, that which we gazed at. Now notice the shift in tense. This one's an aorist. We looked at. So the perfect here means, yes, we heard it back then, but we still hear it. The words that we heard are still ringing in our ears, if you like. That's the present implications of the perfect. This is a perfect. So we saw it then and we see it still. What we can't do anymore is directly gaze at it because it isn't here anymore. So Jesus was present, is no longer. Okay? He was ever since the beginning. What we heard and saw is still with us, but we can't look anymore. So this is the result of looking. This is the looking. So John is very clear that Jesus is no longer around to be gazed at. But he was once, and we did it then, aorist, so that we have this picture that goes with us, these words that go with us. We're going to get the point soon that what John is doing is making the past experience that they had present for the hearers or for the readers of this letter. So again, multiple clauses in apposition to each other. That which was from the beginning, that which we have heard, that which we have seen with our eyes, that which we gazed at, and our hands, the hands of us, touched. Again, this is an aorist. We don't know this verb, but you can look it up. So we can't touch him anymore because he's not here anymore, but we did. We touched. Concerning. So now this is where it's going to turn into a digression. So all these things we did, we gazed at, we touched. The result was that we have this thing we saw and heard. All of this is about the word of life. Notice how this picks up themes that were also present in the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, in him was life, or in it was light, and the life was the light of people. So he's going to go with these same themes, life, and soon he's going to talk about light, etc. So John is clearly writing to people who know the Jesus story, introducing some of the main vocabulary that he uses elsewhere to talk about Jesus. So all these experiences we had concern the Word. This is, of course, going to be identified later as Jesus, the Word of life. And then we get the digression that we'll come back to, but we'll just leave it for now, concerning the Word of life. And now he resumes this long list. That which we have seen, same as this, and that which we have heard, same as this, we are announcing also to you. So that's the main part of the sentence. Summarized, we, whoever we is, are announcing to you, readers, this word of life, this thing that has always been, that we touched and gazed at in the past, but the result was that we have this ongoing tradition. We know what we've seen, we know what we've heard, and we're passing all these things also to you. Why? So that, in order that also you might have fellowship with us. We'll take that apart grammatically in just a minute. John's purpose for writing this letter and for presenting this information in this gospel is so that the past experience, which is non-repeatable, that was the experience of actually gazing at Jesus and actually touching him. The past experience, that can't be repeated. But what resulted from that past experience, this word that is now with us, this portrait of Jesus, this ongoing experience of fellowship with Jesus, that's the thing that the first generation of original hearers and seers are passing on to a next generation that doesn't see and hear in the same direct way. And John believes that the ongoing experience of fellowship with the church, with the community, with Jesus himself, not only is possible if you were there when it happened, but if you hear the testimony of those that were there when it happened and join them in believing in this same Jesus. So just a couple of things that are being emphasized by this part of the sentence. And I'm going to turn off the recording so it doesn't get too long and start a new one. With the rest of with the next recording, we're going to take the digression and we're going to look at how the rest of this paragraph ends. But just to summarize, John is emphasizing the fact that Jesus has been there from the beginning. This is a Christology that is pre-existent, that's very strong in John. But he's also emphasizing that this Jesus really, truly became a human person. He could be touched, he could be looked at directly. This is consistent with the rest of the Gospel of John, where John is really arguing for the full humanity of Jesus. None of the synoptics do that because they didn't need to. Nobody was doubting it. But by the time John is writing, you have the inroads of Gnosticism and Docetism and some of these early heresies that are thinking of Jesus as some sort of a semi-divine being in the heavenlies that doesn't really truly become fully human. So later on, John is going to say, if you don't confess that Jesus came in the flesh, you're an outsider. You're not speaking the truth. So yes, he is there from the beginning, but he certainly became a real, true human person who could be gazed at and touched in the past. No longer, but he could then. And the experience they had, seeing and hearing Jesus, is now ongoing. It creates a fellowship, and that's the part that can be passed on to the next generation of hearers. So that, I think, is the main gist of pretty much the first sentence. I'll start a new recording to look at the digression and then how the paragraph ends.